Chapter 1. Myths of Origins. The gods and the birth of Greece. You open your eyes to a world where the sky, the sea, and the land are not just elements of nature, but living forces, ruled by mighty beings far beyond human grasp. This is not a world of science and logic yet. It is a world shaped by myth, where stories breathe life into the mountains and whisper through the olive trees. And here at the very beginning of what will one day be called Greece, everything starts with the gods. You are born into a people who believe that the universe sprang from chaos, a formless void. Out of this emptiness came Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. They were the first to give form to the world. From their union, the Titans were born, immense beings of raw power who ruled long before men existed. But the reign of the Titans was not peaceful. It ended with rebellion, as one of their sons, Cronus, overthrew Uranus. Yet even Cronus could not escape fate. He feared his own children would do the same to him. So he swallowed each newborn whole until one escaped. His name was Zeus. You hear the stories passed from elders to children, from poets to kings. Zeus grows in secret, raised on the island of Crete. When the time comes, he returns to challenge his father, frees his siblings from Cronus' stomach, and leads the Olympians in a terrible war. After 10 years, the Titans are defeated, and the age of the Olympian gods begins. Now the gods live on Mount Olympus, gazing down at your world with human flaws and divine powers. They argue, love, deceive, and punish. They are distant, yet dangerously close. You pray to them for rain and victory, for fertility and mercy. Zeus rules the sky, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. Athena gives wisdom and courage, while Ares brings war and blood. Each polis, each city-state, has its own patron, and temples rise across the land in their honor. But these myths are not just tales of gods. They are mirrors of your world, explaining the sun's rise, the thunder's roar, and the crop's failure. They teach you morality and warn you of hubris. When a mortal dares to rival the gods, they are always struck down. You remember Icarus flying too close to the sun, or Prometheus, who gave fire to mankind and was chained for eternity. Among the stories, one stands above all, the tale of Troy. You grow up hearing the songs of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey sung by traveling bards. The Iliad tells of Achilles, of honor and rage, of gods meddling in human fate. The Odyssey follows Odysseus, a clever man lost at sea, struggling to return home. These are not just stories, they are your cultural foundation. They bind your people together. Even if your city is poor and small, you know these tales. They give you a sense of identity, of destiny. And so before there is philosophy, before there is democracy, there is myth. It is the myth that unites a scattered people across islands and mountains. It gives a common language, a shared pantheon, and a heroic ideal. The Greeks are not yet one nation, but they all believe in the same gods, the same heroes, and the same epic past. As you look around, you realize the landscape itself is sacred. Her cave may be the birthplace of Zeus. A spring may be guarded by nymphs. Every grove and mountaintop holds some divine presence. This is a world where the invisible and the visible intertwine. Your festivals, your rituals, your theater, all are born from these myths. You understand that your people do not fear the unknown by avoiding it. They embrace it by weaving it into story. They do not separate the divine from the human. Instead, they place gods in the image of people and people in the shadow of gods. In this beginning, there are no books, no theories, no constitutions. There are only voices around the fire, retelling what the gods once did and what you must do to honor them. These myths are your history, your law, your science, your art. And though the world will change, though philosophers will rise, armies will march, and empires will fall, it all begins here, in the realm of myth, where the gods walk among mortals, and the seeds of civilization are planted not by logic, but by imagination. You are not merely a listener, you are a part of this story. Chapter 2. From Chaos to Polis. The birth of the city-state, you step forward from the world of myth and find yourself in a land both beautiful and broken. Mountains rise sharply between narrow valleys, and the sea carves its way into every shore. There are no wide rivers or vast plains to unite the people. Instead, the land divides. The result is a tapestry of small, scattered communities, each fiercely independent, each proud of its name, customs, and gods. This is the cradle of the polis. You live in a time when kings have vanished and the old palaces of Mycenae lie in ruins. The Bronze Age has passed and the memory of Troy is fading into legend. But out of the ashes, something new begins to take shape. It is not a kingdom, not an empire. It is a city, walled, self-governing, proud, and around it, a people who call themselves citizens. The word is polis. More than just a place, it is a way of life. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, these are not merely towns. They are political experiments, cultural microcosms, islands of order in a world that still feels fragile. You are not ruled by a distant monarch. Instead, you belong to the polis, and it belongs to you. You fight for it, you worship in its temples, you join its festivals, and in return it gives you identity and protection. Citizenship becomes something sacred. To be a full citizen means you are a part of something larger than yourself, something worth dying for. But this system didn't appear overnight. In the beginning, it is the landowners who hold power. Aristocrats, noble families with wealth passed down from generations, form councils and make decisions. The poor, the artisans, the farmers, they have little say. Yet even so, this is different from tyranny or monarchy. The polis is alive. It listens, resists, changes. You witness growing tension. The old order cannot hold forever. In many city-states, the gap between rich and poor deepens. Some are enslaved by debt. Others flee the city to avoid starvation. In this time of unrest, a new figure emerges, the lawgiver. These are not mythical heroes. They are real men who reshape society with pen and wisdom instead of sword and fire. In Athens, you hear of Draco, who writes the first laws, so severe they are said to be written in blood. Then comes Solon, a poet-statesman who cancels debts, frees enslaved citizens, and opens the path to greater participation. These reforms do not please everyone, but they plant the seeds of what will become democracy. In other cities, different paths are taken. In Sparta, the laws are said to have been given by the legendary Lycurgus, who turns the city into a military society. There, every male citizen becomes a soldier, trained from childhood. Sparta does not follow the road of trade or debate. It chooses discipline, silence, and strength, yet even as each polis grows in its own way, they share certain things. A central marketplace, the agora, where goods are traded and ideas exchanged. A temple to the gods watching over the people. A calendar of festivals and games. And most importantly, a belief that to be human is to live in a community. The individual matters, but always within the whole. You begin to see how the physical world shapes the political one. The sea becomes a highway, connecting city-states through trade and war. Ships bring grain, wine, pottery, and knowledge. Colonies spring up across the Mediterranean, from southern Italy to the Black Sea. These outposts carry Greek language and culture far beyond the mainland, but the polis is not eternal. It is fragile. It depends on unity, and unity is hard to maintain. Rivalries flare, wars erupt. Some cities fall under tyrants, men who seize power during moments of crisis. Others try bold reforms, only to find themselves torn by faction and unrest. Yet out of all this turmoil, you see something extraordinary. A civilization learning to govern itself. You watch poets and philosophers begin to ask, what is justice? What is a good life? What is the best way to rule? These questions are born not in royal courts, but in the heart of the polis. And they will echo for centuries to come. As you stand in the agora, among the voices of merchants, citizens, and philosophers, you understand something profound. Greece is not a single kingdom, but a mosaic of ideas and experiments. It is here, in the dust of the streets and the shadow of the temples, that the foundation of Western political thought is being laid. You are no longer just part of a myth, you are now part of history. Chapter 3. Athens and the first dream of democracy. You walk the streets of a city unlike any other. Marble columns rise beside sunlit courtyards. Philosophers argue in the shade of olive trees. Artists shape gods from stone, and poets speak truths, wrapped in verse. This is Athens, bright, restless, questioning. It is not the richest city, nor the most disciplined, but it is bold, and it is about to give the world an idea that will outlive empires, democracy. But it did not begin that way. You remember how Athens was once ruled by kings, then by aristocrats. Power was kept in the hands of the few, landowners, nobles, men with long family names and longer memories. For the common people, life was hard. Farmers fell into debt, craftsmen had no voice, tensions rose, and with them, the fear of civil war. Then came Solon. You watch as he rewrites the laws of Athens, not to please the rich or stir the poor, but to save the city itself. He cancels debts and frees the enslaved. He divides citizens into classes, not by birth but by wealth, allowing more to participate in government. It is not yet democracy, but it is a beginning, a moment where justice steps forward. Still, change is never smooth. After Solon, power slips again. A man named Pisistratus takes control as a tyrant, not cruel, but firm. He builds temples, supports the arts, and gives land to the poor. But even as Athens thrives, you sense the people growing impatient. They want more than comfort. They want a voice. And then, in a moment of great courage, they seize it. You stand in the heart of the city, near the Myx Hill, where citizens gather under the open sky. There is no throne here, no crown. Instead, there is the ecclesia, the assembly, where free male citizens speak, vote, and shape the laws. Anyone can raise their hand. Anyone can propose a motion. Decisions are made by the many, not the few. This is not democracy as you know it today. Women, slaves, and foreigners are excluded. But for its time, it is revolutionary. Never before has a society allowed ordinary people to guide their own destiny in such a direct and regular way. You learn that democracy does not mean chaos, it means structure. The Boule, a council of 500, prepares issues for the assembly. Officials are chosen by lot, not lineage, so no family can dominate forever. Every citizen is expected to serve, to learn, to lead. Even generals are elected by vote. The Athenian democracy trusts its people, with all their flaws, to govern themselves, and the results are astonishing. You witness a cultural explosion. Great tragedies are performed in open theaters, stories of fate, honor, and the gods. Sculptors carve forms that seem to breathe. Architects raise temples like the Parthenon, whose beauty still humbles the world. Philosophers like Socrates begin to question everything. Justice, truth, even the very meaning of democracy itself. You begin to feel what makes Athens different. It is not just its government, it is its spirit, its belief that no idea is too sacred to challenge, that no man is above the law, that a citizen is not just a subject, but a builder of the future. But democracy comes with risk. You see how public opinion can be swayed, how demagogues can stir the crowd with clever words. You learn that freedom is fragile. Socrates, the very man who taught others to think, is sentenced to death, accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. The people who built democracy now use it to silence a voice that made them uncomfortable. Still, despite its flaws and failures, Athenian democracy is something new in the world, something daring, something that generations will look back on and say, here is where it began. The idea that power does not belong to kings or gods, but to the people. And as you stand among them, raising your hand to vote, you feel a sense of purpose. You are not a bystander in history. You are part of the decision, part of the risk, part of the dream. Because in Athens, the greatest power is not wealth or war or even wisdom. It is the voice of the citizen. Chapter 4. Sparta. The warrior code and the price of strength. You leave behind the bustling agora of Athens and journey south across the jagged mountains of the Peloponnese until you reach a city unlike any other. There are no grand temples. Here, no theaters, no marble statues carved with delicate hands. The land is quiet, the people quieter. But the silence is not emptiness. It is discipline. You have arrived in Sparta. This is not a city built on words. It is a city built on order, on obedience, on war. You begin to notice how different life is here. In Athens, a citizen debates. In Sparta, a citizen obeys. The purpose of life is not freedom but strength, not expression but unity. Every man, every woman, every child is molded to serve the polis, the city. And the city in return demands everything. You are born into a system designed not for comfort but for survival. At birth, you are inspected by the elders of the tribe. If you are healthy and strong, you are allowed to live. If not, you are left to die. The judgment is brutal, but in Sparta, weakness is a threat to the whole. At the age of 7, you are taken from your family and placed into the agoge, the Spartan training system. You learn to march, to fight, to endure pain without flinching. You sleep on reeds. You wear one cloak all year, no matter the weather. You are taught to steal, but not to get caught. Punishment is not for theft, but for failure. By 12, you have scars on your hands, your back, your mind. But you also have pride. You do not complain. You do not ask for comfort. You stand tall because that is what a Spartan does. The education of a Spartan boy is physical, but it is also mental. You learn songs, history, the stories of heroes like Heracles and Leonidas. You learn to speak briefly, precisely, with biting. This is the origin of the word laconic, after Laconia, the region you live in. Few words, much meaning. When you reach adulthood around 20, you become a full soldier. You join the Syssitia, a communal dining group of warriors. You eat together, train together, fight together. Brotherhood is everything. Individual glory is meaningless unless it serves the state. You live under the laws of Lycurgus, a lawgiver, so revered that his reforms were said to be given by the gods themselves. Whether he was real or myth, his vision is carved into Spartan life. Money is forbidden. Iron bars replace gold and silver. Luxury is seen as corruption. Trade is discouraged. Foreigners are distrusted. Art is limited. The only true art is war, and war is everywhere. You quickly learn the truth. Spartan society is built on fear, not of enemies from without, but of rebellion from within. The Spartans are few in number, but for every citizen soldier, there are 7 or more helots, enslaved people from conquered lands, especially from Messenia. They farm the land, feed the city, but they are never trusted. Each year, the Spartan state declares ritual war on the helots, giving young warriors the legal right to kill. It is called the Krypteia, a secret rite, a silent terror. You understand. Now why Sparta is always preparing for battle, not just against foreign armies, but against its own fear of uprising. And what of the women? Here they are unlike women anywhere else in Greece. They are strong, educated, and free to move about the city. They do not fight in war, but they are trained in strength and endurance. They run, they wrestle, they speak with boldness. A Spartan mother is expected to raise warriors. Her pride is not in her beauty, but in her son's courage. Come back with your shield, or on it, she tells them without flinching. Sparta is not without greatness. Its army is the most feared in this known world. Its discipline is legendary. Its people are united, efficient, nearly incorruptible. When the Persian Empire threatens Greece, it is the Spartans who stand at the narrow pass of Thermopylae. Just 300 men holding off thousands, led by King Leonidas. You will hear that name across the centuries, not for victory, but for defiance, for choosing death over surrender. Yet you begin to wonder, what is the cost of such strength? There is no art here to inspire, no debate to refine thought, no trade to connect ideas. The walls of Sparta are not made of stone, they are the bodies of its men. And in the long peace, those walls begin to crack. As you walk through the streets, you realize that greatness can be narrow, that a society built only for war may survive, but it cannot grow, it cannot change. And in time, that rigidity will become its weakness. Still, you cannot help but admire it. In a world of chaos, Sparta offers certainty. In a land of words, it speaks through action. It shows the world that courage, discipline, and sacrifice can shape a people into legends. You carry this lesson with you, not just about Sparta, but about civilization itself. There are many paths to greatness, but every path comes with a price. Chapter 5. Between Athens and Sparta, allies, rivals, and the road to war, you stand on a narrow bridge between two worlds. On one side, the open air of Athens, filled with argument, ambition, and restless thought. On the other, the hard stone of Sparta, built on silence, obedience, and iron discipline. These two cities, so close in land yet oceans apart in spirit, are destined to shape the fate of Greece. And soon their paths will collide. But not yet. At first they are allies. You remember the moment when Persia, a vast empire stretching from the mountains of Iran to the shores of Asia Minor, turns its eye westward. The Greeks, divided and quarrelsome, must unite or be crushed. When the Persian armies land at Marathon, it is Athens that rises first, unexpectedly, gloriously. You watch as citizen soldiers, hoplites in gleaming bronze, run across the plain to meet the enemy. Against all odds, they win. And then, a decade later, Persia returns, larger, angrier, determined. You see ships darken the sea, soldiers pour through mountain passes. It is here that Sparta steps forward. At Thermopylae, King Leonidas and his 300 men hold the line. They do not expect victory, they seek only to delay, to inspire. And they succeed. The Greeks fight together, city beside, city shield beside shield. At Salamis, Athenian ships destroy the Persian navy with daring and speed. At Plataea, Spartan hoplites crush the Persian ground forces. For a moment, you feel something rare. Unity. But victories fade, memories shift, enemies disappear, and friends become rivals. After the war, you watch Athens rise like a phoenix from the ashes. Its fleet expands, its walls grow stronger, its economy surges. It creates the Delian League, a collection of allied city-states originally meant to guard against future Persian attacks. But over time, the League becomes something else. Athens begins to treat its allies more like subjects. It demands tribute, not cooperation. It uses the League's wealth to build temples, theaters, and a navy that rules the Aegean. You walk through the Parthenon, funded by silver from distant islands, and you sense the tension beneath the marble. Sparta watches, suspicious, silent. Sparta, too, has its league, the Peloponnesian League, older, more conservative. It does not dominate the seas, but it commands fierce loyalty on land. Where Athens encourages trade and art, Sparta restricts it. Where Athens builds empire through wealth, Sparta relies on tradition and fear. You begin to feel the rumble beneath the earth. Small. Disputes flare. Corinth quarrels with Corcyra. Megara is sanctioned by Athens, Potidæa rebels. These sparks are not random. They are embers in dry grass, fanned by ambition and fear. Beneath every argument is a deeper question: who will lead the Greek world? You sense that the differences between Athens and Sparta are not just political, they are philosophical. To Greece, the Athenians, power is something to reach for, to shape, to question. To the Spartans, power is a duty, inherited and preserved. The Athenians admire cleverness, the Spartans admire silence. One praises the individual, the other suppresses him for the good of all. You witness the slow unraveling of peace. Alliances harden, words grow sharp, armies are called up, and then, after years of tension, of insults and fear and unresolved pride, the war begins, the Peloponnesian War. You feel the weight of it in the air. Unlike the Persian invasions, this war is not about survival from a foreign enemy. It is a war of brothers, of Greeks against Greeks, and that makes it crueler, deeper, more personal. Athens has the sea, Sparta has the land. Athens strikes with its navy raiding coasts and cutting off trade. Sparta marches into Attica, burning fields, trying to draw the Athenians into battle. But Pericles, the Athenian leader, resists. He brings the people inside the walls. And then, disaster, plague. You walk through the city as bodies pile in the streets. The disease spreads quickly in the cramped conditions. Tens of thousands die, including Pericles himself. The city weakens, faith falters. Still, the war drags. On year after year, decade after decade. You see alliances shift, betrayals unfold, unexpected heroes rise and fall. You hear the names Alcibiades, the charming traitor, Brasidas, the noble Spartan, Nicias, the cautious general. You watch the Athenian expedition to Sicily, a bold gamble turned to catastrophe. Thousands of soldiers lost, a navy destroyed, hope shattered, and always, behind the fighting, is the question neither city dares to ask: can Greece ever be one? Chapter 6. The Fall of Athens. Defeat, reflection, and the cost of empire. You return to Athens, not the radiant city of philosophers and marble temples, but a place darkened by grief. The streets are quieter now. The laughter that once danced through the symposia has faded. You walk past empty homes, crumbling walls, and faces drawn with fatigue. The Peloponnesian War has drained Athens of wealth, of pride, of people. You remember when it all seemed unstoppable. Athens, with its great navy, once ruled the Aegean like Poseidon himself. Its democracy had survived plague, rebellion, and siege. Its citizens still believed in the dream of reason over chaos, of the city as a light to the rest of Greece. But dreams, you begin to realize, are fragile things. The Sicilian expedition was the breaking point. You recall the fanfare as the fleet set sail. Over 200 ships, thousands of soldiers, bound for Sicily to conquer the city of Syracuse. The mood was euphoric. This was to be Athens' next great chapter. Empire not just over the Aegean, but across the Western Sea. But then came the disaster. Poor leadership, local resistance, Spartan aid to the enemy, all compounded by arrogance. Few return from Sicily. The survivors are broken in body and spirit. You see the shift in the city's heart. Confidence gives way to blame. In panic, Athens becomes harsher. The democracy that once prided itself on open debate now grows paranoid. Generals are exiled, political rivals accused of treason. Even Socrates, an old man who once merely questioned everything, is viewed with suspicion. Meanwhile, Sparta adapts. With help from Persia, Sparta builds a fleet to rival Athens. You never imagined Spartans would turn to foreign gold, but desperation bends even the most rigid. Slowly, steadily, they take the war to the sea. The balance begins to tip. Then comes Aegospotamy. You stand on the shore as the last great Athenian. Fleet is caught off guard. Lysander, the cunning Spartan admiral, strikes decisively. Nearly every ship is destroyed. The sea, once Athens' dominion, is now silent. You watch the survivors march home on foot, starving, ashamed, defeated. The final blow is near. In 404 BCE, Sparta lays siege to Athens itself, but there is no need for violence. Athens, starved and surrounded, surrenders. The once proud empire, home, to Pericles, Sophocles, and Socrates, lowers its walls and its head. You witness the unthinkable. The city's famed long walls, those stone veins that connected Athens to its port at Piraeus, are torn down, one block at a time, to the sound of Spartan flutes. It is not just a tactical act, it is symbolic. Athenian pride is dismantled stone by stone. And yet as you stand in the broken agora, you feel something stirring. Athens is defeated, yes, but not dead. The city's soul is too vast to vanish. The Spartans, though victorious, do not raise it. They cannot. For all their strength, they know this place holds something rare. A kind of immortality not built on conquest, but on thought. You begin to reflect. What was lost in war not only lives or power, but trust. Between cities, between citizens. The democracy that once trusted its people turned inward, fearful, suspicious. The pursuit of empire clouded the pursuit of virtue. And the greatest lesson may be that the cost of unchecked ambition is not only external, it is internal, corrosive. You recall how Pericles once warned, "Freedom is the sure possession of those alone who have the courage to defend it." But what he did not say is that courage must be matched by wisdom, power by restraint. And so the war ends, not with a heroic stand or a noble peace, but with a city bent, not broken, a light dimmed, not extinguished. You walk past the ruins and hear whispers of something deeper than victory or loss. Athens, even in defeat, remains a symbol. not of empire, but of ideas. The same ideas that will outlive Sparta's spears, ideas that still linger in the dusty scrolls, the cracked statues, the silent minds waiting to speak again. Chapter 7. Socrates. The trial of a philosopher in a city that lost its way. You sit beneath the faded portico of the agora, where once ideas echoed louder than armies. Now, after war and ruin, only fragments remain, of statues, of honor, of truth. And yet one figure still walks these broken stones with unwavering calm. Socrates. You've seen him before, of course. The old man with the worn cloak and bare feet, always standing in the marketplace, always questioning. He speaks not like a priest or a politician, but like someone peeling away illusions, layer by layer, to find the core beneath. You remember, your first encounter, he did not preach. He asked, "What is courage? Do you truly know what justice is? Can someone be wise if they think they already know?" At first, his questions felt like riddles, but over time you realize he is doing more than debating. He is challenging the foundations of your world. He is forcing you, and all of Athens, to look inward. But the city does not want to look inward. After the war, Athens is wounded, angry, searching for someone to blame. The empire has collapsed. The democracy is shaken. The people are exhausted, desperate for stability. And in that mood, a man like Socrates is dangerous, not because he wields power, but because he refuses to pretend. You notice how others begin to turn against him. Some accuse him of corrupting the youth, of making boys question their fathers, of mocking the gods. Others claim he supported the oligarchs who briefly seized power after the war, the 30 tyrants. Though he had no part in their crimes, the association is enough to sow suspicion. The charges come swiftly. Officially, they read, impiety against the gods of the city and corrupting the youth. But you know the real crime, provoking Athens to think. You are there on the day of the trial. The court is packed. 500 citizens as jurors, a tradition of Athenian democracy. Socrates, now 70, stands calm, almost amused. He does not plead for mercy. He does not flatter the court. Instead, he speaks plainly, even defiantly. He says, "I am a gadfly sent by the gods to stir this great horse of a city from its slumber." He admits that he knows nothing with certainty, but insists that is precisely what makes him wiser than those who think they know everything. He does not beg for his life. He does not apologize for speaking truth. You feel the tension rising. Some nod in agreement, many frown in anger. In a city humiliated by war, Socrates' defiance feels too much like arrogance. His words, once celebrated, now sting. The verdict comes guilty. And when asked to propose his own punishment, Socrates, with quiet irony, suggests free meals for life at the Prytaneum, like an Olympic hero. The court is outraged. The sentence is death. You follow him to the prison. Days pass. His friends urge him to escape. Bribes have been arranged. The guards would look away, but he refuses. He says, "To flee would be to abandon the laws I have lived by. It would make my words meaningless." And so, one morning, you sit nearby as Socrates calmly takes the cup of hemlock. He speaks to his friends, comforting them. He asks that they offer a rooster to Asclepius, the god of healing. Even in death, he speaks in riddles. You watch as he drinks. The poison begins in his legs. He describes it calmly, like a teacher in a final lesson. His breath slows. His voice fades. And then, silence. Socrates is gone. But something strange happens in that silence. You feel a ripple, first small, then growing. His student Plato begins to write, obsessively, preserving every word, every idea. Others begin to debate his teachings. In time, Socrates' death becomes not an end, but a beginning. His death raises questions that cannot be buried with his body. What is the role of the individual in society? Can a democracy survive without critical thought? What happens when a city fears truth more than lies? And so you realize Socrates' trial was not only his, it was Athens' trial too. A city judged itself in the way it treated its most honest voice. You walk through the agora again, and though the philosopher is gone, his questions still hang. in the air. They are waiting for you and for anyone willing to answer without certainty, but with courage. Chapter 8. Plato and the World of Forms. Truth Beyond the Shadows. You sit alone in a quiet garden outside the city walls of Athens. The war is over. Socrates is gone, and yet his presence lingers, like an echo in the mind that refuses to fade. The city has lost a voice, but in the silence that follows, a new one begins to rise. Plato. You remember him. Tall, calm, observant. One of Socrates' closest students. He rarely spoke during debates, but when he did, his words were like arrows. Sharp, precise, purposeful. After Socrates' death, Plato vanishes from Athens for a time. But when he returns, something in him has changed. He is no longer just a student. He is a seeker. You hear rumors that he's begun writing. Dialogues, he calls them, conversations. In memory of Socrates, filled with questions, challenges, and moments of sudden clarity. You read one, then another. Each feels like a maze, but a maze with purpose. Her guide through the fog of uncertainty. Then you hear of the Academy, a school unlike any in the world, built by Plato not to teach facts, but to train minds. He chooses a grove near the shrine of Academus, away from the noise of the city. Here, under olive trees and marble columns, students gather, not just to memorize, but to argue, to doubt, to think. You walk there one morning, curious. There are no formal classes, no rigid hierarchy. One day they discuss justice, the next, love. Then astronomy, mathematics, poetry. All subjects are welcome because all knowledge is connected. At the center is the belief that the visible world is only a shadow of something deeper. Plato explains it with a story, the allegory of the cave, said among his students as he speaks. Imagine prisoners chained in a cave since birth. All they can see are shadows on the wall, projections of real objects behind them, cast by firelight. They believe the shadows are reality because they've never seen anything else. You close your eyes and see it, the flickering wall, the faceless prisoners, the illusions that feel real. Then Plato continues, now imagine one prisoner breaks free and climbs into the sunlight. At first he is blinded, but slowly his eyes adjust. He sees the real world, trees, animals, the sun itself. When he returns to the cave and tells the others, they do not believe him, they mock him, they fear him. You feel a chill. It is more than a story, it is a mirror of your world. Plato calls this higher realm the world of forms. In this world, beyond the senses, lies true knowledge, the perfect form of justice, of beauty, of goodness. Everything you see around you, statues, laws, people, is merely an imperfect reflection of these eternal truths. You begin to see the difference between opinion and knowledge. Opinion comes from the senses, from the world of change and decay. But knowledge, Plato says, must come from reason, from turning the soul away from the shadows and toward the light. You ask him, how can we reach this light? He replies, through philosophy, through dialectic, through the lifelong struggle to examine what is real and what only seems real. And then he says something that stays with you. The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates once said it. Plato carries it forward, not as a quote, but as a mission. In the Academy, you find others like you, seekers, skeptics, dreamers. Some speak of ethics, others study geometry. One speaks of a new way to order the state, not by wealth or birth, but by wisdom. A philosopher king, he says, should rule, one who has seen the light and returned to guide others. You wonder, is that even possible? But in Plato's vision, the city is more than buildings. It is a soul, divided, struggling, searching for harmony. And just like the soul, it must be ruled by reason, not desire. He writes it all down in his Republic, a book that blends philosophy with politics, logic with myth. He imagines a just city, built not by ambition but by understanding. He calls for education, equality in spirit, a rejection of luxury in favor of truth, and though some call him an idealist, you sense something deeper, a defiant hope. Plato knows the world is flawed. Athens has proved that, but he also believes that humans can rise above the cave, that through reason and courage we can climb toward what is real. You walk the garden path one last time and look back at the academy. You are changed, not by a single answer, but by a lifelong invitation to doubt, to question, to climb, and beyond the cave, even if the sun blinds you, to never stop seeking. Chapter 9. Aristotle. Reason, nature, and the blueprint of the world. You have spent years wandering the groves of the academy, listening to Plato speak of ideals and shadows, of worlds beyond sight. You've watched students debate the form of justice, the eternal shape of the good. And yet a part of you still wonders, what of this world? The trees, the stars, the blood in your veins. Must they all be illusions? Then comes Aristotle. You meet him first, not as a mystic or prophet, but as a man of piercing intellect and boundless curiosity. He does not gaze upward at a realm of perfect forms. Instead, he looks around at the buzzing of bees, the anatomy of fish, the patterns in the sky, and says, "Let us understand what is here." He speaks in a way unlike Plato, where Plato seeks perfection beyond the senses. Aristotle dives into the senses themselves, believing that knowledge begins with experience. You follow him through olive orchards, into dissecting rooms, across city streets. Everything he sees becomes a puzzle. Every answer births another question. You are drawn to his method. He calls it logic, a system of reasoning so precise, so structured, that even thoughts can be measured. A is B, B is C, therefore A is C. These syllogisms become a kind of compass for navigating truth. You begin to realize, for Aristotle, truth is not beyond the world, it is within it, waiting to be uncovered. He builds a library of the living world, plants, animals, organs, elements. He observes, records, categorizes. You help him place them into groups, genus, species, function. He is the first to try to map life not through poetry, but through pattern. He does not merely admire nature. He seeks to understand its blueprint. But his mind stretches beyond biology. He speaks of ethics, not as commandments from gods, but as habits of excellence. What makes a good life, he asks, not power, not pleasure, but virtue, the ability to find the golden mean between extremes. Courage, for example, lies between cowardice and recklessness. You begin to see your daily choices not as fate, but as training, each action a chance to shape your character. Aristotle calls this eudaimonia, a flourishing life. It is not granted. It is earned through reason, discipline, and engagement with the world. He teaches you about politics too. Unlike Plato's ideal republic, Aristotle studies real city-states, Sparta, Athens, Crete, and asks, what works? Why does it work? He believes the best political system is one that balances the rich and the poor, that allows citizens to participate and to be educated in virtue. He does not dream of philosopher kings. He dreams of educated citizens, people trained not in conquest or rhetoric, but in rational self-rule. One evening, as the sun sets over the academy, you ask him, "Do you believe in the gods?" He smiles, not dismissively, but thoughtfully. "I believe," he says, "in a prime mover, something that causes all motion but is not itself moved, a source of all existence. Perhaps that is divine, but our task is not to speculate endlessly. It is to understand the world as it functions, its causes, its principles, its order." You realize he is building something grand, a philosophy of everything, a unified vision in which nature, ethics, politics, logic, and metaphysics are not separate fields but parts of one living whole. And perhaps most astonishingly, he teaches not just men but princes. One of his students is a young Macedonian, sharp, ambitious, with a hunger for greatness. His name is Alexander. Aristotle teaches him about Homer, politics, and ethics. He prepares the boy not just to rule, but to understand the world he seeks to conquer. You do not yet know what Alexander will become, but something in your bones tells you this philosopher has just lit a flame in the mind of a future empire. As you walk through the porticos of Aristotle's school, the Lyceum, you see students measuring shadows, slicing open fish, debating the nature of happiness, comparing the constitutions of cities, and you understand something profound. Where Plato gave you the dream of what could be, Aristotle gives you the tools to grasp what is. This is no longer myth or magic. This is the beginning of science. The world is no longer a stage for gods, but a system, rational, elegant, knowable. And in that knowledge, you feel a new kind of awe. Not fear of divine chaos, but respect for the harmony of cause and effect. You leave the Lyceum changed, not because you found all the answers, but because you learned how to ask better questions. Chapter 10. Alexander the Great, the philosopher king and his empire of fire. You remember the boy from the Lyceum. Restless, curious, impossible to ignore. When Aristotle spoke of Homer, of Achilles and Hector, the boy listened not like a student, but like someone reading his own prophecy. His name was Alexander, son of Philip of Macedon, heir to a mountain kingdom, but born with the fire of a myth. Now, years later, you hear his name again. Not in academic circles, but on the lips of soldiers, merchants, and kings. Alexander is marching east. You trace his path like a comet across the earth. First, he unites the Greek city-states, some by diplomacy, others by iron. Then he turns his gaze toward the ancient enemy, Persia, the empire of 1,000 satrapies, stretching beyond the horizon. You ask yourself, is this Plato's philosopher king? He was trained by Aristotle, steeped in logic, taught to value wisdom. But Alexander carries something more primal, a burning desire to surpass all before him. He is not content to rule. He wants to reshape the world in his image, and so he crosses the Hellespont. As his army steps onto Persian soil, he throws a spear into the earth and declares it his by right of conquest. He is 22 years old. You hear of Granicus, his first great battle. Outnumbered, surrounded, he charges the Persian cavalry head-on. It is madness, it is genius, it is victory. Then Issus, where he meets King Darius III. The Persian army is vast, hundreds of thousands, but Alexander cuts through them like thunder. Darius flees. Alexander seizes his family but treats them with dignity, mercy wrapped in dominance. At Gaugamela, the fate of two worlds collides. Dust fills the sky. Elephants trample the plains. Darius flees once more, but this time, Alexander does not stop. He hunts him across deserts, through mountains, until the Persian king is dead, betrayed by his own men. And just like that, the greatest empire on earth is his. You expect him to return home, to enjoy the spoils of conquest. But Alexander is not finished. His hunger knows no borders. Babylon, Susa, Persepolis, he claims them all. Cities burn. Others are reborn in his name. Alexandria on the Nile. Alexandria in Arachosia. Alexandria by the Oxus River. Each one a seed of Greek culture, language, and philosophy. Yet the farther he travels, the more distant he becomes from Greece. He begins to dress like a Persian king. He marries a Bactrian princess. He demands his soldiers bow before him as if he were divine. You wonder, has he transcended his roots or betrayed them? His men grow weary. They followed him across continents, but now in the jungles of India, they begin to break. At the Hyphasis River, they refuse to go farther. For the first time, Alexander yields, not to an enemy, but to limits. He turns back. But the journey home is a torment. Across the Gadrosian desert, many perish. Disease, heat, thirst. The empire he built begins to crack under its own weight. Rumors of revolt, murmurs of madness. And then, in Babylon, he falls ill. Some say poison, others say fever. You hear of wild plans he made before his death. New conquests, great temples, a fusion of East and West into one culture. But death comes swiftly. At 32, Alexander dies. A god to some, a tyrant to others. A mystery to all. You stand at the edge of history, staring at the empire he left behind. His generals divide it like wolves. Ptolemy in Egypt, Seleucus in Asia, Antigonus in Macedonia. The dream of unity dies with him, but the legacy remains, and you realize something. Though Alexander conquered the world with force, it is the ideas he carried, Greek language, science, and thought that endure. In Alexandria, scholars will one day gather at the greatest library on earth, translating works of Plato and Aristotle into every tongue. Greek will become the language of learning from the Nile to the Indus. You understand now? Alexander was not a philosopher king, he was a warrior dreamer, a bridge between thought and ambition. He spread the seeds of Hellenism with a sword, but what grew from them would shape civilizations long after the steel had rusted. You return to Athens, older now. The city has changed, but in the academy and the lyceum, the spirit of inquiry lives on. In every question asked, in every scroll copied, you hear an echo not just of Plato and Aristotle, but of the boy who dared to chase the horizon, and in that echo, Greece lives. Chapter 11. The Hellenistic Age. Between empires and enlightenment, you once stood in the shadow of the Parthenon. You heard the echoes of Socrates in the Agora, felt the sting of Spartan blades at Thermopylae, and watched Alexander blaze across. The earth like a comet. But now something has changed. Alexander is gone. There is no king to unify the known world, no single vision to command east and west. His generals, those fierce men who bled beside him, have carved his empire into fragments. They call themselves kings: Ptolemy in Egypt, Seleucus in the east, Antigonus in Macedonia. But they are not visionaries. They are survivors. This is the beginning of a new era. You hear it called the Hellenistic Age, a time when Greek culture stretches farther than even Alexander dreamed. From the shores of the Aegean to the sands of the Indus, Greek becomes the language of science, trade, and art. But beneath this unity lies tension between tradition and innovation, between the polis and the palace. You travel to Alexandria, the crown jewel of this age. It rises on the Egyptian coast like a dream. Here, under the rule of the Ptolemies, Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Jewish cultures blend into something utterly new. You walk streets filled with spices from India, scrolls from Athens, and whispers in half a dozen tongues. At its heart stands the Library of Alexandria. You enter with awe. Hundreds of thousands of texts line its walls: Homeric epics, Babylonian, astronomy, Egyptian medicine, philosophical treatises copied from every corner of the known world. It is not just a library. It is civilization's memory. You meet scholars who speak not of gods and myths, but of atoms, geometry, and astronomy. There is Euclid, mapping the invisible rules of shapes and space. His elements will become the foundation of mathematics for 2 millennia. There is Archimedes, who discovers principles of levers and buoyancy, and who shouts Eureka in his bath upon solving a puzzle of density, and Eratosthenes, who dares to measure the earth itself using nothing but shadows, angles, and reason. His estimate, astonishingly accurate, reminds you this age believes not just in power but in precision. But the Hellenistic world is not only about knowledge. You feel the weight of empire, of distant kings ruling over foreign subjects. In Athens, democracy flickers like a dying flame. The city still debates, still teaches, but it is no longer the center. Power now flows from palaces, not assemblies. You witness the rise of new philosophies born not in freedom, but in uncertainty. The Stoics teach that peace comes not from changing the world, but from mastering yourself. You meet followers of Zeno, standing in painted porches, preaching calm in the face of chaos. Live according to nature, they say. Accept what you cannot control. Then there are the Epicureans, who seek not indulgence, but inner tranquility. They warn against fear, of death, of gods, of fate. Pleasure, they say, is the absence of pain. You feel their appeal in a world where empires rise and fall in the span of a generation. There is also the strange, cosmic pull of the mystery cults, from Dionysus to Isis, offering salvation, secret knowledge, and life beyond death. People crave meaning beyond logic, beyond politics. You begin to understand this is not merely the spread of Greece. This is the fusion of Greece with the world. And yet, even as culture flourishes, you sense cracks beneath the surface. The kingdoms of the successors, those born from Alexander's ambition, begin to turn on one another. Wars rage in Asia Minor, Egypt, and Syria. Armies march under banners claiming lineage to a dead emperor, fighting not for vision, but for control. Meanwhile, in the distant west, a new power stirs. the Republic of Rome. You hear of Roman envoys, of legions crossing into Greek territories, of senators speaking the names of Macedon and Corinth with growing ambition. But for now, the Hellenistic world endures. You look around and see art that stuns with its emotion. Sculptures of aged fishermen, dying warriors, grieving women, no longer idealized gods but human beings, full of tension and truth. You attend a play where actors wear no masks. The drama is no longer myth, it is about people like you. Lost, yearning, resilient. The chorus is gone. The story is yours. And you realize, though the golden age of the polis has passed, a new kind of greatness has taken root. Not the greatness of heroes, but of thinkers. Not the greatness of gods, but of human possibility. This is a world trying to make sense of itself. Through science, through reason, through art, through story. You are no longer simply Greek. You are Hellenistic, a citizen of a wider, stranger, richer world. A world shaped by conquest but sustained by curiosity. A world that remembers Athens but no longer bows to it. And yet, even as you embrace this new age, a shadow begins to grow in your thoughts. You have heard of a place beyond. The Adriatic, a republic built on discipline, law, and ambition. Its name is whispered now, but soon it will thunder: Rome. Chapter 12. The Rise of Rome. When Greece meets its shadow, you stand at the edge of a changing world. Behind you lies the golden glow of Greece, the glories of Athens, the rigor of Sparta, the ambition of Alexander, the wisdom of philosophers. Ahead there is a different light, colder, harder, Roman. You hear of them first as traders, then as soldiers. Quiet at first, careful, but methodical. One by one they absorb their neighbors, the Etruscans, the Samnites, the Gauls, and then they look across the sea toward the legacy of Greece. Rome does not come with philosophy on its lips. It comes with legions. You watch as the Romans march into Magna Graecia, the Greek colonies in southern Italy. Cities like Tarentum, once proud, now bend to Roman discipline. They try to resist. Pyrrhus of Epirus even brings war elephants to fight them. He wins battles, but Rome keeps coming. And eventually the cities fall. Then come the Punic Wars, and you realize Rome is not just a power. It is an idea. Ruthless, resilient, strategic. It grinds down Carthage, that great maritime rival, until not a stone is left standing. And when the dust settles, Greece is no longer out of reach. You watch from Corinth as Rome's gaze turns eastward. At first, they claim to be protectors, defenders of Greek freedom from Macedonian kings. But you know better. You've seen this story before. The battles begin. Cynocephalae, Magnesia, Pydna. The great Hellenistic kingdoms fall like dominoes. Macedon is shattered. The Seleucids are pushed into the shadows. Egypt clings to independence, but barely. You remember when the Greek world was the center of civilization. Now it becomes a prize, a jewel for Roman generals to display in triumph. Then comes the blow you feared. In 146 BCE, the Roman legions return, not as diplomats, but as conquerors. They lay siege to Corinth, one of the last proud Greek cities. And when resistance proves stubborn, they burn it to the ground. You walk among the ruins, statues toppled, temples cracked, paintings ash-gray with smoke. Once Greece had resisted the might of Persia with spirit alone. Now, its cities crumble under Roman iron. And yet, Rome does not destroy Greece, not completely. In fact, it absorbs. Greek slaves become tutors for Roman children. Greek art fills Roman villas. Greek gods are renamed but still worshipped. Jupiter echoes Zeus, Mars echoes Ares. Venus whispers Aphrodite's name. Even the mighty Roman Senate studies Plato and quotes Aristotle. Cicero, Rome's greatest orator, calls himself a student of Athens. You see something strange happen. Rome conquers Greece with weapons. But Greece conquers Rome with ideas. This is the paradox you must live with. You walk through a Roman library and see scrolls rescued from the ruins of Athens. You sit in an amphitheater built by Romans, but designed in the Greek style. You hear Latin spoken with Greek rhythm, the conqueror and the conquered, now entwined. And as time passes, you understand. Though the Greek polis is dead, Greek thought lives on, not just in philosophy and science, but in law, architecture, even politics. The Roman Republic, with its Senate and assemblies, was shaped in part by Greek debates on citizenship and virtue. You see the fusion of two worlds, and in this fusion, something enduring is born, a foundation for what will one day be called the Western world. You take one last look at Greece, not the battlefield, not the broken statues, but the eternal flame of thought, of reason, of the human spirit reaching upward. You remember Socrates, standing trial for corrupting the youth. You remember Pericles, dreaming of a city that shines through the ages. You remember Leonidas holding the pass at Thermopylae, not for victory, but for honor. You remember Alexander chasing the edge of the world, and now you remember Rome, powerful, disciplined, unrelenting, but walking the road Greece paved in thought. The journey ends not with collapse, but with transformation. You are no longer just a witness to history. You are part of its legacy, a descendant of minds that dared to question the gods, to measure the stars, to seek the truth, even at the cost of comfort. And so, as Rome rises and the Greek city-states fade, one truth remains: empires fall, but ideas endure.